Oop.
Hello and welcome to episode 56 of our Conversations to Connect. I know, can you believe it? Let's get
56.
real talk, powered by Exceptional Connections. I'm Cyndi ONeill-Dady, the founder and chief connector of Exceptional Connections since 2009. At Exceptional Connections, we offer intentional and innovative solutions to boost your business. So each month we nominate a different member of our Exceptional Connections community to have a meaningful conversation with. So be sure to make yourself comfortable with a cup of tea or a beverage of your choice and take notes, and be sure to add comments, questions in the chat box, and we'll engage with them in the course of this conversation. Around the 45-minute mark, I'll unmute the lines and invite our listeners to enter into our thought-provoking conversation, ask questions, share their epiphanies, their ahas. It'll be great. So in the course of these 56 episodes, we have encouraged and supported our community to stay connected and, just really be involved during these challenging and uncertain times. I don't know if that's a word or not. So as we get started, I invite you to set aside distractions and invest your attention in the conversation that's about to unfold. So look for just one idea that you can take away and put into action so you don't cheat yourself out of the opportunity and the time that you've invested here. So our conversation to connect this week is with Sandy Stamato from Seattle, Washington. Welcome,
Yay.
Sandy. So glad to have you.
Oh, I'm glad to be here.
I'm really excited about the topic that you're going to be able to share with our community. This is a topic you shared at our Exceptional Connections networking event
right
2 weeks ago.
Tuesday. Yeah.
And gosh, time flies, right? And you spoke about is your brain friend or foe when selling your amazing gifts to the world? And so before we dive into this conversation, I want to take a moment to introduce Sandy to our listeners and share her passion for helping female entrepreneurs transform their mindset around sales so that they can bring their gifts to the world. So Sandy Stamato is a sales mental fitness coach with over 35 years of experience in sales, advertising, training, and consulting, helping female entrepreneurs and healers transform their mindset around sales so they can make a bigger impact in the world. Her signature program is Sage Selling, which is based on the cutting-edge technology of positive intelligence, a brain rewiring journey that enables her clients to catch their internal saboteurs, access the positive part of their brain so they can bring their gifts to the world with more ease, confidence, and abundance. It's her mission to truly change the world of sales, one woman at a time. So welcome again, Sandy.
Yay. Thank you so much. Well, it's good to see familiar faces, and this is like one of my favorite topics. It's like you're going to have to cut me off in 45 minutes because I just find it so fascinating. So welcome, everybody. What I wanted to do, I think you guys were all at the luncheon, but people that are watching this may not be. So what I wanted to do, if you just kind of bear with me, I'm going to go through, I changed the slides up a little bit, but I want to go through a little bit of the PowerPoint so you guys can review what we're talking about. And then Cindy's got some questions for me, and then you guys, of course, whatever questions you have. So
I'm gonna stop for just a second here. If you could just share just a little bit about your journey before you just dive in, or is that going to be your
absolutely
presentations? Yeah.
So my journey in terms of how I got into this, and it's actually part of the slideshow, but I'll no worries. So
sure, if it's part of it, go for it.
Yeah, basically, I'll talk about it. Please, it's about me. Are you kidding? Oh my God. No, I think I mentioned it again at the lunch, but really the short version is I've been working with women and men. I've been working with professionals for over 35 years, and always around the issue of sales. So I would be a sales trainer, and then I would be a consultant, and then I would come facilitate sales teams. And then I did more consulting, and then I became a coach. And through all that time, one of the things that was so, God, and everybody here can, I'm sure, relate, it was so not baffling, but so discouraging for everyone is that we would get to that point where we come up with this magical, mystical, that elevator spiel. We had the interest igniter, we had the whole kit, we had a program, we had a path to success. And I would call and say, hey guys, or hey guy or gal, how's it going? And they would say, oh, it's going great. I go, well, how's the process? Oh, it's sitting on that, it's sitting on the counter. I'll get to it. So it was like, oh, and I didn't have a way of going, what's getting in the way? Because I wasn't skilled, I wasn't trained, but I always felt like I was missing the bus somewhere. And maybe for other people that'd be okay, but it wasn't for me because I've always had a mission that I really, truly wanted to make a difference in that. I did some training with some really interesting salespeople. We're talking people that, how do I say, had a very unique connection with integrity. I'm just going to say it like that.
Okay.
And so I used to do I did a 3-week sales training course for a company I used to contract out for. And by the end of it, we kind of got to some stuff. And so at that point, when I was 32 years old, I thought if I can take one person from the dark side to the light side, my mission is done. So that's really been with me for a long time. So fast forward to positive intelligence. By the time positive intelligence found me, I was ready to call it a day. I really was. And I have to tell you, I was looking at jobs at Costco and it looked pretty good because I thought, God, I can get my steps in. I just got to get the shopping carts. I thought, wow, I'll lose weight. I'll get in shape. I get great benefits. And within about a week or two after that moment, I got a call from a buddy of mine that said, have you heard of positive intelligence? And I said, oh my God, I love positive intelligence. I had seen Shirzad on international summits for training, for coaching for years. And I just figured it was going to cost tens of thousands of dollars for this training. I always thought, oh God, it's kind of interesting about intention. I thought, oh God, if I could just take this class, that would be amazing. And so knock, knock, knock. And there was a grant program and I said yes. And honestly, the rest is history. Because I took to that like a fish out of water or a fish in water, I guess, whatever. Anyway, I was going to say one thing I didn't mention, and I'm talking about it more and more, but I know about neuroplasticity. I know about how our brains work because I had a pretty severe traumatic brain injury when I was 52 years old. And it was a hard stop. I mean, my life literally stopped. And I had to retrain how my brain works. So if you can imagine, it's like you always knowing the same way, like you drive the same way home for 52 years, let's just say, the same way home every day. And you get there no problem. And it's just auto response. And then one day after this car accident, you get in the car to go and you know that there's a way to go, but you can't find your way. That's what a brain injury is like. And so I could feel when my neuroplasticity, when my neurons, when my, neural system, when all of that started happening, I could feel that. So when this, fast forward 8 years later, when this came into my life, it made so much sense because I know it works at a level that we have so much information about now. So I'm committed on many different levels of this.
Well, I love stories like yours because they really help us to understand it's not just positive intelligence and all this wonderful stuff. It's a journey that, like you say, it found you and you were ready for it.
I was so ready for it.
I love that. So before we jump in, I know you're going to mention this, but I think you've mentioned positive intelligence. There may be people that didn't attend our event last couple of weeks ago, and that stopped them. They're like, "What is positive intelligence?"
Right. Is it okay if I kind of go into this because talks
absolutely.
Let me do that. So bear with me. I mean, I can talk about it, but sometimes with this stuff, it's really good to have visuals.
Yes, I agree.
So I'm gonna. Where did that go? So you guys know this story. This is what I talk about. It all starts with positive intelligence. And you guys just heard my story. I always put that dog up there because that's how I felt after a while when it was just like, oh my God, I'm working with these amazingly talented people. And I was working with people that had a lot to give. And I worked with some people that literally could not sell themselves out of a brown paper bag. And that's not because they weren't smart. It wasn't because they weren't talented, but it was because they had so much chatter in their head that to do that would have taken so much effort. And so that's why I got intelligence or positive intelligence, as we just talked about. So to answer your question, Cyndi, positive intelligence is about mental fitness, which is, it's like positive intelligence, mental fitness. Okay, what does that mean? What it means is your capacity to respond to life's challenges with a positive rather than a negative mindset. It sounds good. I've heard stuff like this before. But what's interesting is the impact, and I'm going to show you a minute, how they tested all this, but the impact, initially it was designed for peak performance. So they worked with sales teams. Shirzad's company, Positive Intelligence, worked with 100, the top 100 Fortune 100 companies. That's right. But it was all about sales and performance. And what they found out is that the peace of mind and wellness of this practice, they didn't anticipate this. And that how you show up at work one way and then you come home and you bring that same sense of ease into your home life, and how it affects your relationships. And I have to tell you guys, when I was doing this while I was in Portugal, right? My husband and I went to Portugal, which was such a blessing. We went to Portugal for a couple of weeks. Normally when we go to a trip, my husband's Italian. I love my husband. He's New York Italian. I'm Irish. How do I say this? We get into some interesting discussions. I mean, it's never a dull moment with the two of us. And what I want to tell you is that during this trip, we didn't have one snag. I got COVID while I was in Portugal. We had the best trip ever because I was doing this process because I was looking at all those challenges with a positive rather than negative mindset. So that's another reason why I was in. So people always want to know, because there's always something new. There's always something sparkly. There's always something we can do to get better, right? Many of us are seekers. It's always important to know, like anything, is to know where this information came from. So this literally is a combination of a lot of disciplines of the neuroscience, of cognitive behavioral psychology, positive psychology, performance science. In addition to that, their research include elite athletes, CEOs from Fortune 100 companies, Stanford students, and over 1 million participants from 120 countries. So this has been around for a while. Power of factor analysis. So we talked about the capacity to respond to life's challenges with a positive rather than a negative mindset. Well, that sounds great. How do you do that? Right? They have emotional intelligence, they got DISC, they have all these things. How do you do that? One of the things which I found very interesting, and maybe some of you guys know about this, is factor analysis. And that's when you take all the stuff together and you find the cause. And then it results when you know what the root cause of something is, right? Like say your kid's acting up, and if you're just focusing on the fact that he's not shutting the door, he's not doing this and he's not doing that, and you don't get to the root cause that maybe he's really upset about something that happened at school, you spend a lot of energy and time and it doesn't work for anyone, right? So for example, what root cause means is like in colors. If factor analysis rather means in colors, thousands and thousands of colors, but it comes down to red, blue, and green. That's factor analysis. So what that means for this process and what it means for positive intelligence is that what they found out is there are three core muscles that will help people respond to the challenges in life with a positive rather than a negative mindset. And that's what they found out was the root of mental fitness. And the first one was saboteur interceptor. So we talked a lot at the lunch. I went through all 9 of those universal saboteurs, which we all have at some level, depending on what's up, depending on what's going on with us. So that saboteur interceptor, right? That saboteur is the one that says, and I'll go into this, it's the one that says you get an opportunity, let's say, to really step it up. Really step it up. You get something comes into your lap and it's like what you've been dreaming of. And the minute that the second thought starts up that says, yeah, but, don't forget, yeah, but, right? Yeah, but. And so that, yeah, but that saboteur is trying to keep you safe. But unfortunately, it gets louder and louder the bigger we show up. So being able to intercept that is huge. Self-command is how people get confidence in this program. That's what this program is about. To be able to have a way of tracking that, being able to stop it, pause it, and choose another route is everything, right? That's what when I say that I started doing when I had the brain injury. This is what it wasn't called positive intelligence, but it was very similar to this, where I had to learn to stop. I had to meditate or do 2 or 3 minute pauses all during the course of the day. I had no idea that what I was really doing was building that self-command muscle. Now, I didn't keep it going because like any muscle, it'll atrophy if you don't keep it going. But so I had an experience of what that was like, being able to choose how I wanted to feel. And then
use it or lose it, right?
okay, like any muscle, right?
Right,
Yeah.
exactly.
The older I get, the more relevant that little saying happens.
Mm-hmm.
So when I talk about sage, I always want to say that this is where we thrive. This is where all the positive parts of our brain hang out. And it's like that experience when, when you show up a certain way and you say something or do something, and you're kind of impressed with yourself. Like, oh my God, I just fell a little in love with myself. Look at that. Look at how I showed up. Look how I showed up for my kid, or look how I showed up for my friend, or look how did I know how to say that?
So kind of being in the zone.
Well, it's a part of our brain. It's our frontal cortex. So yeah, it is a zone.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know about you guys, but I've never, like when that would happen, I'd go, oh God, I want that. How do I keep that? It's like, how do I access that with ease? And that was where the big question mark was.
So access it intentionally instead of just like a fluke, like, oh, where did that come from, right?
Again, a muscle, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So it's again a muscle. So we have to start with the saboteur, and the saboteur interceptor in Shahzad's program, which I'll talk about later. We spend most of the time talking about saboteurs. And the reason why is because those little buggers are so hardwired into us. And like I mentioned, again, I'm sorry if I'm repeating myself, but from the lunch, but we're born with a judge. It's survival. That's like when you hear about babies that are crying in the woods and soldier, whatever, something horrific happens and those babies cry or stop crying, right? Because they can feel their mom holding them. That's that initial instinctive. That's what keeps us alive. And then we have something called, and this is where we focus, the accomplished saboteurs. And when we're younger, those saboteurs are our friends, right? They're the ones that help us survive. They help us, like, for all imagined threats. Sometimes we have our imaginary friends, right? But by the time we're adults, it's not helpful anymore. Unfortunately, what's happened at this point is they've been soft coded into our brain and into our neural pathways. Cyndi, those pathways I was talking about that I could feel moving, that's what's embedded. Mm-hmm. So to say, like, I'm going to pause for a moment here. If I may, I'm going to stop for a minute. To say that I'm lazy because I'm not doing something, or I'm stupid, or whatever it is, that isn't me saying that. Literally, I'm owning it, right? Because it comes out of my mouth. I'm not saying, I'm being taken over by aliens. I don't mean that by any means. But that is soft coded into my neural pathway. And when that gets triggered, meaning that somebody says something that really gets me upset, that's triggered. That's what we talk about being hijacked, because it is soft coded in those neural pathways. So it gets down to science at this point. But I love it. This also, to be able to pause right now and say, this is not about doing something wrong. This is about truly being human. Mm-hmm. And it's important because a lot of people don't realize that this isn't like there's a big character defect and something, I'm just bad or wrong. It's that's how we're soft coded to think. So it may not be a big revelation on this level, in terms of the data level, and we're going, oh yeah, statistically, I understand that. But at a sage level, at a very deep level, that's where we're able to go, oh, whew, right?
So is the magic just having awareness to have access to this?
No, I'll get there. It's such a great question. It's such a great question because we have so much awareness. I have more awareness than I know what to do with, right? So,
Okay.
so I'm going to skip this one for a sec, and I'm going to go to this about awareness. This is why most attempts at change fail. We have that 20% insight, because I don't know about y'all, but I can have ahas all day long. I can have an aha in the morning. I can be in the shower, have another aha, go have lunch, and I forget about it. What I didn't know, and I was a trainer for years, I didn't realize that 80% of that is the mental muscle needed to do that. So if I say affirmations a lot, well, affirmations last 2 or 3 days. And that's not dissing anything about affirmations. It's just stating the fact that to really do this, it really requires focused attention. And one of the things that we talk about, it requires intense, initial practice. And this again is how Shirzad's program works. It's 15 minutes a day for 8 weeks. It's actually 12 weeks. But the whole point of it is that you cannot defeat a gang of 10 by sitting in one new fighter per day for 100 days. It just doesn't work.
Say that again.
You can't defeat a gang of 10, bandits by sending one fighter per day for 100 days. So if we think about it, our brains have been doing push-ups with this, with that soft coating, because when we were younger, it worked. And then that's just our fallback. And then after a while, we can't even discern if it was real or Memorex, right? It's kind of like, someone explained it to me once. They said it was like when you're a kid and you break your leg, like maybe you're 6 years old, they put a little cast on you, just to protect it.
That was me.
Yeah, right?
Right.
And so what happens is it does the job, it protects it, but we don't realize as we get older and older, we never take the cast off and we don't notice it. So after a while, we start buying clothes that kind of hide the cast, or we do something that emphasizes the cast, but it just becomes part of who we are. We don't know that there's anything underneath that cast. And that's kind of what happens. So let me see where I was. So, to your question, that's probably one of the most important questions. And I always like to say, I know we're going to talk about this and I'm kind of jumping the gun a little bit, Cindy, but what does it have to do with sales, right? Which is one of the questions you had asked. And so when I start throwing this stuff up here, you're not smart enough, all that. And that is within 30 seconds. How easy is it to show up with all that chatter going on, right?
It's all negative.
That's what the job is.
Yeah, it's just snarky.
It is snarky. And we think about it, it's like, okay, so we got these voices, tell me something new, right? Well, the reason why there's so much tension inside is because that part of our brain that really wants to express, it's newly evolved, our prefrontal cortex has so much it wants to add to the conversation or shift the conversation. But that chatter is so loud because that muscle is so developed, it doesn't have much of a chance. Every so often it can sneak in. That's why sometimes it's like, well, just do this or just do that. And I'm like, wow, this is a huge muscle. I got to do something to counteract that. So I'm going to go back here for a sec and say, nope, hold on. Nope, hold on. Whoa, look at this. This is kind of fun. Woo! All right, let me see. I think that's, I think that's for right now. I think that's all the slides I wanted to show just to get us up to speed in terms of the saboteurs. We have, saboteur interception, we have self-command, and we have SAGE, which sounds really easy, but to try and change, people have to really want to do it. It's only 15 minutes a day. This whole program was designed for very busy CEOs. So it's a very simple process, but it also brings up stuff because for the first time, identifying saboteur interceptor, it's like, oh my God, I thought that was me. So when I'm now sitting in a meeting and I can feel this happening because I know now how my body reacts, I'm like, oh wow, I got a saboteur coming on board. So I have what's called a brain hack, which is my self-command muscle that allows me to shift into sage. And that is kind of pretty concise, but I hope that at least gets the ball rolling.
No, that's great. And so I know there's a number of saboteurs that you went over at the at our luncheon. Are you going to review those so we can talk about
You know
those?
what?
Or?
Yeah, I didn't really. I usually don't go through them that much, mostly because those 9 universal saboteurs, if people want to take that assessment, it gives
Okay.
a really great description of those. And the
Okay.
reason why I did it for our luncheon
Sure.
is I did it because I wanted people to just have an awareness that there was nothing wrong, that
Right.
all these are universal, whether you speak Swahili, English, French, whatever, we all have that across the boards. Those are the names that they've identified.
So can you, just for the purpose of the replay, just name them? Name the 9 saboteurs.
I don't have them on hand. I can certainly, I mean, I can tell you there's the controller, there's the hyperachiever. You know what I'll do? I'm going to go ahead and put a link in there too. There's hyperachiever. Hold on here.
Okay, by the way, let me just mention, because you mentioned it, and while you're getting your notes
Yeah,
from me,
I've got all
I think
this.
it'd be good to just name them, and they are in our notes, by the way.
Oh yeah, if they're in the notes. And what I really encourage people to do, which I think is much more, honestly, is much more effective, because they're just words until people have something to land with, is that if they want to check out that assessment, because it really, here's the reason why I could rattle them off. People take this as a personality test. It's not. This is not something, it's not like, oh, I'm a pleaser, or oh, I'm a victim, or oh, I'm a hyperachiever, or oh, I'm hyper vigilant, hyper rational, hyper whatever, right?
Right.
People will take that and say, oh, I'm a pleaser, this is what I do. And it's like, when we're working together, there's a certain point, it's fascinating, it's probably about week 3 or 4, when people start saying something like, my saboteur says this. And when people
separate yourself from that,
separate the sage,
yes,
the essence, where it's like, oh, my saboteur says this,
right,
and isn't that interesting? I
right,
was able to catch it.
right.
Human nature will always get sabotaged. It's just
yes. No. So I just wanted to underline in this conversation, I took your positive intelligence test, and then you and I had a session yesterday, and it was fascinating. So I agree with you. You know, we don't want to take ownership like that's who we are. You know, I'm a pleaser, I'm a controller, I'm a whatever. It's just the awareness of it, and then also being able to notice it, to observe it, right?
Which is almost impossible to do most of the time.
Unless you're really able to take the test and identify your top 3. Isn't that important?
It is, but the reason why you hear me going like that is because, again, awareness is a beautiful thing. How do you make it become habitual? How do you turn that into a daily action so that you actually have command over your brain? Because I read this book. I was doing this with my clients, and I was, it wasn't until, and I'm not saying this is the only place to do it. There's other ways you can do it. Sure. I like this particular program because it's backed up scientifically, but most importantly, it creates an environment where you have a pod of people that help you. You have a weekly coaching session. You have an app that you work with that's interactive, that they gamified it so you can track how your muscles are moving. You have access to an international community of people that are going through the program at the same time you are.
So you have support.
On all cylinders. It's right. Designed so that you can literally turn something into something sustainable. We call it really your operating system after a while. Because
beautiful.
Because that's kind of the baseline of everything I do now. Because I have to build up that muscle, and I do it every single day. I do my just like I would do hypothetically. I got to get the sit-ups going.
Right.
But I do this. Yeah.
So question, how, we went over some of the saboteurs. We don't want to focus on those right now, but how does that information help us?
In terms of, hopefully it sparks the interest. That's, it's interesting, and it's very fascinating, and people get a lot out of that, just knowing that that's what that is. Mm-hmm. But my hope and my desire is that if they don't do this work, they do it somewhere else.
Okay.
Because here's the thing about saboteurs. They're really tricky. They are designed to keep a storyline in place. And to live small, because small is safe. And that's just the truth. And so when we start wanting to expand, which is why I work in sales, because you have to expand in sales if your business is going to be successful.
Right.
It just kind of flickers along. But if you aren't able to really get in your own way, get out there and talk about your business with some confidence, to be able to say, this is what I do, and this is a gift I want to bring to the world.
Right.
Would you like to learn more about it?
Well, successful salespeople, they tend to go outside their comfort zone. That's what
Successful
makes
salespeople do. It shows
right.
up in other ways.
Right.
Now, but the people I work with, and the difference between working with salespeople and working with entrepreneurs is pretty drastic, because salespeople are walking into that. And I'm not saying, I mean, they usually work with salespeople with this, mostly because the price a lot of salespeople pay for being successful is extraordinary. The price they pay to push themselves forward is extraordinary. The impact it has on their health, on their families, on their friends, on their clients. And so when we come into sales organizations, it's like, what do you think about, instead of doing it from this perspective of the saboteur, what about the sage? Because the sage has 5 powers. The sage is extraordinary. We barely tapped into it. And so
with
which
more
one?
ease, right? Is that what you're
All about
referring
more
to? Yeah.
ease, ease and flow.
Right.
Because it really is. I mean, I look at the impact. That car accident I had at 52. I was at the top of my game. I was very, very successful in my industry in sales, and I think I got 2 or 3. I was rear-ended like 2 or 3 times, just a little tappy tap, right? Rear-ended always. And then I was taking a little bit of time off, and I was driving in Seattle down this one street, and I got hit again. Yeah, and it was like, oh, my back hurts. That's bad. And then exactly 6 months to the day, I got hit. Was it as hard as the other ones? I don't know. It's a cumulative. Your brain takes hits. And I was, but that's what I'm saying. I wasn't paying attention because I was so into my hyperachiever, so into my hyperachiever, so into my controller, so into getting this getter done. They used to call me the machine when I was in sales. It's not a compliment.
So you come by this knowledge has really helped you personally as well. You've had epiphanies and ahas, and sounds like it's been really
changed my
transformative for
DNA.
you.
Yeah, it's changed people that I'm working with. I'm still in touch. I've worked with 26 clients right now, and everybody that I've talked to, I've been in touch with. We have community meetings. It is profound because it is actually changing. It rewires our brains.
So one thing that's coming up for me that we didn't really talk about very much, we were just kind of prepping for this conversation. And in the consultation that you had with me yesterday is we've heard about the term like ego and id. Like we have this part of ourselves that's real primal and that, essentially keeps us alive. That's its job. It doesn't want the lions and the tigers and the bears to get at us, even though we live in a world where we don't see them very often unless we go to the zoo, right? But those terms keep coming up for me, but you're using the saboteurs. Are they kind of
How does that work?
Or how would you differentiate them?
Yeah, it's not really different. It's a great question. Your ego that's your judge, your survival, like full on. And the short version is, when we're kids, that judge is so nasty to keep us alive as little ones that we come up with ways to compensate. So that's why when we're younger, like if I get A's, right? If I'm really good and get A's, they'll like me, or this will happen, right? So I don't have to hear
So does that kind of like I'm trying to look for the word, like feed the pleaser part of you?
They call it an accomplice saboteur.
The accomplices.
The judge always starts the party.
Oh, got it.
The judge always starts the party, and then it just
accomplices.
Depends. Okay. Yeah, accomplices. Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
It's fascinating. It really is. So why is positive intelligence so important right now? What has created this, kind of emphasis in recent years with or how long has it been around? I should ask that first.
Well, positive intelligence, all this probably started about 2000. I mean, that's when positive psychology, positive psychology started off because they knew why people like in therapy, they were always investigating what was going wrong. And there was this big push to say, well, let's start investigating what's going right. And so this whole emphasis on positive psychology, and I'm giving a very short version. I used to
Sure.
do a lot of work around gratitude and how that, a lot of the studies around how that changes our brain as well.
Mhm.
So there just was this shift where people started looking at this side versus that side. And I say that side, in terms of the negative part of our brain. They want to start finding out more about our positive part of our brain. It's newer. We don't know much about it. It really is. It's relatively new. We were always, we're geared for negative bias. We're always geared to look at what's wrong. And then this was a shift to start looking at what's right. And
Mm.
so positive intelligence, one of the reasons why it's really taken off, because they started the grant program when COVID hit. And it was
Oh,
because there was so much survival, and still is. There is a lot of people walking around with lizard brain.
right.
You just get in the car, you go to the grocery store. I remember, getting toilet paper, a month and a half into COVID, and it was terrifying. People were grabbing toilet paper.
I know.
And so it's gotten to the point now where there's more of an appetite for this because people are exhausted. The price we're paying for
Mm.
living in survival mode is very high. And so the whole idea of the sage perspective is that everything can be turned into a gift or opportunity, which
Mhm.
sounds like, what the hey are you talking about? But when you think about it, or you shouldn't think, don't think about it. It's kind of the no thinking part of our brain. It's where we have the emotions and feelings. And like we talked about a little bit earlier. There's two ways we communicate, right? What we call it, we communicate on the data channel. I could give you stats. I could talk to you about, percentages and studies and all that good stuff. And then there's what we call the um, uh, PQ channel, right? And that has to do more with when you meet people and you understand their energy and you feel, sometimes in sales, you don't even know what the person's selling. You just like them. There's something about that
Right.
person. You ever bought something where you're like, why did I buy something? You're like, I don't even know what they're selling. And I said, yes,
Right.
because inherently at that level, because it's a contagion, right? We are feelings and emotions. We're human beings and we connect. There was something about that person where you went, God, I don't know what that is, but I want what you have. That's what
Right.
sage selling is about.
That's fascinating. That really
Oh,
is. Because it's so true. It's not about the product a lot of times. It's about the person you're dealing with. Of
100%.
course, we can talk about the know, like, and trust factor, and all of that is woven into it. But that's kind of what they call the je ne sais quoi. You can't put
You
a
can't,
pin in what it
that,
is.
that's the best description of what sage is. So to access that, it takes a
Mm,
lot of muscle because you're
mm,
fighting a lot of soft-coded data, and
mm,
that's been doing push-ups, right? Because
right.
it's worked for a long time, and then it's overexceeded its help and
Mhm.
use, but we still are running on that same neural pathway.
Wow,
So
this is fascinating. I just love all this. This is a really intriguing conversation. Thank you so much for
oh,
sharing
you're so
your
welcome.
passion for it, because I can tell. I mean, this is something I love, the foundation. That's why I appreciated you sharing your journey. You've been immersed in sales for years. That was your bread and butter. That was your area of expertise. You had life happens, and positive intelligence found you, and so you have a different perspective. So you bring a really holistic viewpoint of positive intelligence from your experience,
Absolutely.
right? And I love that.
Absolutely. Thank you. Me too.
It's amazing. So we talked about a little bit, before this call, about other programs. So I'm a junkie. I love doing those kind of, assessments, and the DISC and the Myers-Briggs, and all
Right.
different types of things. So how is positive intelligence different than other, you know, mindset programs that you
Sure.
mentioned?
So I don't call this a mindset program. I call it a mind change program
Okay.
because it's literally about rewiring your brain. And it is, it is, and me too. I mean, I've done Landmark, I've done Tony Robbins, I've done, you name it. I think I've done it. Context train. I've done a lot of those, which has been really extraordinary. But unfortunately, 4 days or 5 days after I get home, I lost the quote unquote buzz. And it's just like, oh, back to it. This is different. This is like every day for 15 minutes, I have worked to change the way my brain works. So now I have a level of freedom and a level of confidence I've never had before. So I have a strong desire to keep doing this because how it's affected my marriage, how it's affected my friendships, and how it's affected my business is like night and day. This you're seeing right here is Sage. I used to do a lot of public speaking, but this is like I'm showing up full on,
Right.
because, I mean, and my desire is that people, whatever they get from this conversation, they're able to walk away knowing one thing: we are not our saboteurs. And it's a really hard message to get unless you've been in there and have that saboteur awareness, because it's baby steps. It's not just like, oh, I'm that. I mean, it takes some digging, and it takes support.
Well, and having the distance to be able to view it as an other instead of part of yourself, right? And as you mentioned earlier, to be able to say, my avoider wants me to think this or feel this.
Right.
You're not owning it. You're
Well,
observing.
I own it. I own all of it. I own my behavior. I own my choices.
Okay.
But I'm really aware that this is what's influencing me.
Oh, what's influencing?
So the difference so the difference what positive intelligence is about is it's in the moment. So you see people doing this, right? It's in the moment. It's not like I can meditate in the morning and put my mat out and be like home, and then I get in my car and I want to kill somebody. Doesn't help. But what positive intelligence does is all during the course of the day, you get reminders, you have exercises that you do 15 minutes a day so that you start rewiring your brain. So when I'm sitting here like this, and let's just say hypothetically, somebody came and bombed this call, we had a Zoom bomber or whatever they were, and it got me all flustered. Right. But it got me all flustered. Right. I would have an ability in the moment to take a deep breath and be able to get back on track.
Take us through that. You did that at the luncheon, and I thought it was
really let's powerful. Do that.
Okay. So let's take a moment with and then we'll open it up. We'll open the lines for Q&A. Okay. So be thinking about your questions or things you want to share. So
what I want everybody to do, I don't know who's on and who's off, but I can see you and Chuck. I want you to close your eyes for a minute and give yourself this time. If you find yourself rustling around at your desk, take a moment so you can really experience this, okay? So take those your 2 fingers together, and rub them very gently together with such attention that you can feel the ridges of your skin. 100% concentration. And when you're ready, open your eyes. How was that for you, Chuck?
It's very calming, I must say. And your brain starts dumping all the distractions.
And that's the reason why that's a perfect, it's actually, this is tape.
That's a good way to say it.
Thank you so much, Chuck. But that's what, after we do the sabotage interceptor, so in the moment we get Zoom bombed or whatever, I can't remember the name of it, but someone comes up and does something just crazy, and I can feel my controller, I don't even care what you call it. I just start feeling icky that I'm doing this. Flustered, feeling like I'm losing, like, oh my God, what's going to happen? And this stuff starts up. You won't see it, but almost on every call, I'm doing this while I'm talking to you. I'm taking some deep breaths. So I'm releasing that so I can access that other part of the brain. So that's a great description of it, Chuck.
What is that process called? What do you call that?
We call it self-command.
Self-command. Okay.
Yeah, self-command. So it's a lot of people say with the sage, and we work with atheists, agnostics, and for some people it's a very spiritual. It taps into their own spiritual practice because sage is whatever you want it to be, but it's really the essence of who we are, and sage is about love, and unfortunately our saboteurs are about I don't want to say hate, but they're more about stress and what's wrong with the world. And that's sage is the world of love. And that's what we try to access with that.
That's beautiful. Why don't we go ahead and you can feel free to unmute yourselves if you'd like to ask any questions or comment on the self-command process that we just did. I know that UD just said it's quite similar to setting an anchor in hypnosis, because that's what you do, right, UD?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So this would be in a situation where you find out the saboteurs are getting in the way of you setting that anchor because they don't want to feel good. They don't want to get quiet. So we all run into it. There's quite a few hypnotherapists that have gone through this training because we have all these tools. But if I've got something that says, this is so stupid, I don't have time for this, I'm too busy. Wow, woo-woo, 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 that, right? So that's why this works. That's why we call it an operating system, so that you can have a baseline, so you can be open to hypnosis and you can be open to, whatever it is that you want to open your mind to.
I guess what I'm referring more to is if we already have the anchor, then it's something that I can just use a mudra like this and I'm there, just
Right.
like you're doing with the fingertips. I
Right.
can be there instantly as well.
Right.
So, but this is definitely dependent on already having that anchor set,
And being able to intercept the saboteurs, because those are, you've found it in your work, I'm sure. It's really tricky. I've been working, I have my program, Sage Selling. And so it's after people go through this 12-week course, now we're doing another 3 months. And they're kicking it. But it's like these people have been doing this every single day for months now. And one woman she said, "Oh my God, I just found out I've been living with a saboteur. I thought I was A, B, or C." So it's constantly, unwrapping and finding out what's getting in the way there. And it's tricky. That's why we do it. That's why it's such an intensive 6-week or 7-week program. Because it takes a lot to build that muscle, to recognize it and to learn. And every day in this program, you listen to a 1-hour video and they split it up into like 5-minute segments because it's designed for busy CEOs. So you have 2 or 3 days to listen to that. And then every day during the rest of the week, you listen 3 times a day to exercises that keep embedding that exercise, that thought, to get you keep doing it. And on the app, there's also a gym. So you can go to the gym for an extra workout if you have something big coming up. Like I did a 12-minute gym session before this. So I could just show up.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
So Lisa unmuted herself. Do you have anything you wanted to share or question you wanted to ask?
Yeah, well, you mentioned, Cindy, you took the assessments. Was that the start of it or the beginning before you actually sign up, or did you sign up?
Yeah, no, that's something that she gives you the link and you can go and take this little test and they'll send you the results and then you schedule a one-on-one with Sandy. I'll let her tell you more about it, but and then Sandy is so knowledgeable. She's able to, you give her your top 3
Okay.
saboteurs, is that right? Or is it accomplishers?
Yeah, we just, basically we talk about, something. We usually do the top 1. I think you and I, we were having some fun, so we were kind of getting into it. But for the most part, we do the top saboteur.
Okay.
And we talk about the lies that saboteur tells us.
Uh-huh.
But when you go if you go up online and you do that, during the course of this, your program is customized for your saboteurs. So we have a very specific messaging through the course of it because it's based on what your top saboteur is. And
So
so
is that information on the email you sent out for this, Cindy?
I think it's on there. We can,
It was sent out after our luncheon. I put all the
Okay.
links for that. So if you go back
Yeah.
to the email that I sent post our April 9th event, but I'll send that out. I'll get that to you also.
Okay,
And
thanks.
actually what we'll do is we'll put it on the notes, the description for this YouTube channel,
okay,
Okay.
yeah.
so
Yeah.
that others can take it and then get in touch with you to schedule a one-on-one and then
Okay.
learn about your program. So anything in particular you wanted to ask Lisa about our conversation today, or I
No,
didn't
it's
want to catch you out.
very interesting. I'd
Oh,
like to identify what's going on with me.
Yeah, it is fascinating. And
it
you
is
know, one of
fascinating.
those kind of assessments where they ask questions a bunch of different ways.
Uh-huh.
So you can't outsmart it. But it
Okay.
gives
And you
you a
don't really
heart of-
want to. The thing
Yeah.
is this isn't one of those. The assessment is just a way of identifying the loudest voice in your head, is what I always say. And I
Mhm.
always want to be really clear, this is not a personality test. This is not
Okay.
your plight in life. You're not,
All right.
oh my God, I'm a pleaser. It's like, no, you have that tendency because that was something that showed up for you. And it's
Uh-huh.
worked, you know. So
Okay.
yeah, I welcome. Yeah, please do. Because I think, of course, I think it's best thing since sliced bread. Because I
So
just,
you've been talking about your program, but let's, kind of dive into it a little more before we finish up here. You have a 12-week boot camp program that you offer.
yeah, it's not really a boot camp. Did I say it was a boot camp? Did I call it a boot camp?
I thought that's what you referred to it as.
Probably.
It's okay.
So what it is it's I used to just have Shirzad's program because I'm licensed to facilitate this program. And so
Mhm.
I will do what's called a pod. I create a cohort of 6 people once a month. I'm doing it maybe every other month because I'm starting to get busy, but I usually do it once a month and I talk with people ahead of time to make sure this really is a fit for them because it has to be because it's a very and you've got a bunch of peers you're doing this with. So you got to be willing to be let go about some stuff and talk about some stuff.
Sure.
And after that 6 or 7 weeks, we spend most of the time talking about the saboteurs because they're so strong. They're so strong. They have such a hold on us. So that I extended the program so we could spend more time talking about the sage. And the sage has 5 powers. We have empathy and innovate and discovery and navigate and activate. And it's all on the website if people are interested. But the reason why I talk about that is in the sage selling, we focus on all those powers and how we bring them in to different parts of the call. We identify who are sales saboteurs. What is that? So we preempt our saboteurs. We know, like, for example, I know for a fact, and Cindy, you saw this, I know for a fact before I go to some sort of presentation, it's been a while, and this is not new news, something I will wait to the last minute. I get flustered and papers are flying this time I thought, oh, because it's the first time since post-COVID. I was like, oh, that's a saboteur. Now I know. So now I know how to preempt that. Now I know I get all my stuff done the night before, no matter what, because I don't want to show up like that. My sage doesn't. The price is too high. I'm driving fast. I could get in a car accident. That's a pretty heavy price to pay. And I wouldn't have known I was getting sabotaged. That's just the Watchie women. That's my maiden name. That's just how the Watchie women roll. We're always last. We're on 2 wheels. It's like, no, I don't want that holds no appeal to me. My
Mhm.
sage is like, yeah. So
So you mentioned your website. So that's limdweller.com.
.com.
And that's in the description underneath below. I'll put that in the description below afterwards as well. And so I'll just want one last, anybody else have any questions or you want to comment on something that we covered or Sandy mentioned? This is opportunity.
Can I jump in with something if nobody?
Sure, absolutely.
One of the things I wanted to mention about the sage selling, because I'm only doing it once a quarter and there's
Mhm.
only 4 people in it. So
Mhm.
I only do it 4 times a year. This is what, this was my beta test. right? Because I've been doing these pods for a while, and I wanted to bring my sales training to it, but I don't want to do traditional sales training. It's like, oh. So what I'm able to do with these women is we're actually identifying and going through each step where we get snagged. And then we do synergy, like where all of us work together to help people. Like, this is where you get snagged. We come up with ideas, but the level of success they're having is what's gotten my attention. So positive intelligence is so popular with sales because people across the boards that do this kind of work, because it makes sense. If you're able to access your positive part of your brain, who wouldn't want to work with that? Have a 37% higher rate of success than those that don't. And so that's one of the reasons why sales has always been such a vital key in positive intelligence. And that's why they started saying, but what about wellness and relationships? And it's like, oh my God, it's doing all this other stuff.
Right. There's so many facets.
And when I work with women entrepreneurs, they hear the word sales and they start, a lot of entrepreneurs do, they start tweaking because they think, I'm not in sales. I've had time after, it's like, okay, marketing. I used to have to soften it. And now I'm like, it's sales, but I think sales is a noble cause. I think it's one of the most noble professions. You're giving people the opportunity to say yes to something that could change their life. So I'm a freak. I love sales.
Yeah, it is. I've heard it mentioned sales as an act of love. And I also look at sales as really, it's a paradigm shift, mindset shift where you have to just, I find in my breakthrough, in being able to operate in it, is my job is just to educate. That's it. I'm not forcing, I'm not coercing, I'm not, talking people into it, doing something that they don't want to do. My job is to educate them. And so again, that's how my brain has gotten around that, right? We all have our own techniques.
Right.
But for me, it's like, my job is to educate, and when people are ready, they can take advantage of what I have to offer. So,
and if I may,
sure,
educate and ask for the money that my value brings to the table.
Right.
But sometimes with the educate, this is not yet.
Not just stop there. You're right.
Yeah, because people will educate and educate and educate, but we can't run a business if we're constantly.
Yeah, you don't have to. Well, I'm just gonna say it. Close the sale. They don't close.
You know what? And it's like it's people want to pay somebody for the service. We just have to give them a chance to say yes.
Right.
I mean, and so a lot of times what happens is people will do all the right stuff and then they never say, and by the way, it costs this much. And I'd love to invite you to come join the party.
Make the invitation.
And do it just nothing weird. It doesn't have to be weird. It's just like, this is how much it costs.
Right. Like you're telling the time, right?
Yeah. Because the right people, when you're on your PQ channel, the right people always show up. It's amazing.
Right. They do.
So.
Well, this has been beautiful.
Wow.
I've really, really enjoyed this. I hope those who are been on the call and those who are listening in the replay have benefited from it. I want to make sure, Chuck, you had unmuted for a minute, and I didn't know if you had a question. I want to make sure you get your question answered or insight.
I think Sandy kind of is. I was wanting a comment more on the SAGE, because saboteurs, I understand, the self-command, understand, but so when you go to SAGE, is this like I don't know how to ask the question, but the SAGE is I'm not quite clear what I know. You said it's like love and all that.
Yeah.
How does that relate to the saboteurs?
It's a great question, Chuck. So the whole idea is when you're getting triggered, right? And in that exercise, we did that, right? Mm-hmm. And then what the SAGE is the SAGE is a part of our brain that can see a little kid and give him a hug. The SAGE is a part of our brain that sees the sunset, that feels gratitude, that feels curiosity, that feels all those positive emotions that sadly we have to kind of fight for them because our saboteurs are so loud. So it's kind of like who gets the most airtime. I used to work in radio. It's like, who gets the most airtime? Well, whoever spends the most money on commercials gets the most airtime. And you could have the best service over here, but you only hear about them once every 2 days, right? Because they don't have enough airtime. So this job, the whole point of this is to lower that noise, give you the tools and the muscle to do that, so you can start tapping into that innovation, that curiosity, that stuff that it's like, God, I know what I could do for my business. I didn't even know I knew that person. I bet I know somebody who could, that. And you get excited about it versus, oh no, no way. They're not going to take my call. Why would they take my call? Oh my God, here I am again. Got my hopes up, whatever the story is. So I would imagine that if you really thought about those times, like where you really felt a sense of awe or a sense of gratitude, or a sense of like you did something where it's like, oh my God, I helped somebody out. I didn't ask, I did something because it felt good. That's what the sage is. And there's much more to it because there's powers. When we get into sage, there's power moves, there's guides, there's all these, there's the power game so that you can access it easily. But I don't even do any sales training until people have gone through this, till they've gone through the saboteurs, because it's just the same old. Until people have gone through that, we don't even talk about sales until week 8, maybe week 9, because there's no point in it, because it's just the saboteurs are too loud. And sales is the most stressful business, no matter whether you're self-employed or whether you work for a corporation. No sales, no business. And it is so stressful. And it's the one that creates the most fear. Public speaking, you come and go. You're in sales, you got to do it every day.
Right.
Mhm.
Wow. Well, this has been really fun. So thank you, Sandy, so much for sharing your wisdom, your brilliance, your experience, your journey with us. And
Well,
so
thank you.
in closing, I just want to toss it to you and just give you an opportunity to just, kind of put a bow around the conversation and leave us with some parting words.
Oh, I just want to say, if we could just sit for a moment, I can't see everybody's face, but I just want to say that the sage in me bows to the sage in you.
That's
We
beautiful.
all have it.
Yes.
Thank you so much. This is a vision I've had since I was 30 years old. So
I love it. Well, I love the focus on the positive and on gratitude. I mean, we need more of that in the world. And it's very, it's very appropriate and timely and a good focus and a good use of our time and energy to learn more about it. So thank you for just illuminating this positive intelligence process and your passion for it. We appreciate it.
Oh, thank
I
you.
just want to leave everybody with make every connection an exceptional connection. And thank you for joining us on this conversation to connect.
And
Bye,
feel
everybody.
free to go, if you guys want to do that, please take the saboteur assessment. It's fascinating.
Yes.
Definitely follow up with me, but even if you don't follow up with me, the assessment is so fascinating. It's just, it's so dead on. It's kind of scary. So anyway.
Yes. It's a 2-step process. Take advantage of the information will be again down below.
Oh, and I'm having a
one.
contest. I forgot about that.
Well, that's timely. That's timely. So we'll hold off on that for just a second. But the first part is take the assessment, get the results, and then do a one-on-one with Sandy, and she'll help you through it and then guide you to if you want to plug into one of her programs. So thanks everyone for joining us. I'm just going to go ahead and stop the recording.
Thank you.